All right. All good, Shauna?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right, perfect. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's been a bit of a break since we were able to chat and meet with the full community on this project. If you remember, we went through a series of 3 public outreach sessions, kind of running into early last summer, late last spring, from the master planning and conceptual design phase. Tonight, we're excited to get back in touch with all of you, and then Saturday morning at the park to discuss updates to the plan and just really progression from where we were as we've gone through now the design phase where we're producing construction documents and going through city submittals. So the format of this meeting will be kind of a 2-part presentation, one to go over the site with kind of go over the various areas and the updates, and then second part kind of go over the architectural updates, which really hadn't been developed at the master plan phase, and we're really excited to show you progress on the community center portion of the project. We'll kind of have a pause point in the middle where we can break for some Q&A, and then we'll turn it over to Diane at Holly Street Studios to go through the architectural portion. So with that, I'll start right in and kind of just do a quick background of where we left off and where we are today. Showing, at that master plan level, really focused on increasing circulation with a pool in the lower south east corner of the site, the community garden to the northeast, or the northwest, or sorry, northeast, and the playground kind of shifting into the center for kind of better visual connectivity and safety. As you can see, where we've gone is really just a progression of that. Much of the structure of the park, is per the master plan, with a couple of key moves that we think really actually bettered the plan. One being the shifting of the community garden into the old playground location. This offered an opportunity to continue to use the alley for access, but actually take advantage of the existing infrastructure that was already in place, from electrical, from the playground lighting, that existing shade canopy, and kind of other amenities within that zone. And it has really nice connection with the centrally located play area that you see still tucked kind of in and around those big mature trees, taking advantage of the shade throughout the afternoon. The other main and key move was actually tying in and locating the new restroom within the community center and pool complex. So it's more centrally located to all the amenities. If you recall from the previous plan, it was just to be replaced kind of in its current location by McKemmy, which kind of isolates it. And, through conversations with the city, we felt that it was more efficient and more visible and more usable to be tied into kind of a centrally located spot where you get more eyes on it, you get more activity around it, and it has much better proximity to the basketball court, volleyball court, play improvements, and same proximity to the baseball field. So that's kind of the plan update. So you can see still have a north-south connection connecting to 19th Street, and then a wider, almost like a multi-use trail connection coming from Roosevelt to McKemmy, a nice wide 10-foot sidewalk that leads you into the play area, and then also the community garden for increased access. And you can see a new Ramada as well that's now located south of the playground improvements, which really is, not only serves the playground, but the volleyball court, the basketball court, and has a nice relationship to the community center and pool. So we'll go through the presentation, just kind of giving you updates area by area. I know looking at some of the names on the call, some look familiar, Ken, Frank, and such, and I know there was an interest in the garden. We've been reaching out to Morgan and kind of the garden leadership and have kind of walked through the reasoning and the plan shift of moving the garden location. So we'll start here today, just kind of show you where the garden's located and what's included in those improvements. As you can see, it's got a nice kind of meandering path connection into the proposed garden location, which has a nice relationship to the playground. That existing shade structure would remain, and we'd be able to bring picnic tables and those types of facilities underneath it. With that, a new storage shed and water and power with that. There's been a request to have a utility sink, so that would be included. Also included would be the relocated art ramada that's currently out at the garden. And then all of the beds. So basically everything that's out there would get relocated into this area, be secured with a 6-foot high perimeter fence with gates both to the park and then back into the alley. You can see some of the shots kind of entry into the park and kind of within the garden area, looking towards the dog park area. Let's see how that kind of sets up. Secondly is the playground and the development of the playground. After the master plan effort, the city of Tempe led a neighborhood outreach to discuss with the community the types and styles of play equipment that were preferred. And they've really been leading the effort on kind of selecting and moving that, progressing that forward. But here you can see the new playground layout, generous in its space and the amenities that it's providing. Lots of shade with both structure and trees. And then kind of this artistic form on the ground plane is just a hint at what may be. There's an opportunity that, through the play surfacing and through the city of Tempe, that could be a design by an artist. Here you can see it's separated into several different zones: quiet play and active play, with a 2 to 5-year-old play structure, a 5 to 12-year-old play structure, and then some individual play elements, and then swings. And here's kind of from the meadow view, standing, behind the baseball field, kind of looking back at that play. So it does have a really nice presence within the park, and can be seen easily from McKemey and from Roosevelt and from 19th and accessed from either side. We were just discussing today, right before the call, about the public meeting that will be held out on the park on Saturday, mentioning that we're reserving the existing ramada. And we had to remind ourselves currently the only accessible route to that ramada is from, the McKemey side. And so that will be all improved after these improvements, where the entire site will be fully connected and fully accessible. Won't get into a tremendous amount of detail on these, because this was really part of the outreach that the city had gone through last, I'd say early summer, when we went out and gave some options for various play elements, and then tallied some votes and progressed some selections based on yours and the neighborhood's input. So you can see a lot of various, activities of play and various age ranges of play. So really broad spectrum from toddler up to early teen in terms of that target audience for the playground. And then finally, in terms of the site improvements, getting to the aquatic facility, really this has been a steady progression from the existing, or where we were at the master plan stage. One thing to note that's a pretty significant change from where we had been to where we have gone, that I think really improves kind of that connection to the neighborhood and that approach from 19th Street and Roosevelt, was the movement of the auxiliary building more to the south. So it was north-south facing, kind of where these three, I'm not sure if you're able to see my cursor or not, but these three kind of yellow, orange, and red canopies are located. It had kind of created a wall along Roosevelt. And I think it was a smart move by the design team to go ahead and rotate that and let it kind of live in its own maintenance and operations area, while leaving that view corridor open into the pool, making for a very welcoming entrance, from the neighborhood side and really throughout. So there's really this kind of porosity to the design, where you're able to kind of from the parking lot see through the pool, then out to the park and then the baseball field, which is very nice. And then here you can see the community center and pool to the north, and how that engages the facility. The facility and its structure, the pool itself is programmed to reflect what was approved during the master plan phase, which is a series of fitness lap lanes that are for community use, for swim lessons, those types of activities. Beach entry with splash features, which would include not only kind of at grade splash jets at the beach entry itself, which were great for kind of engaging that younger age of child, but also vertical spray elements. And we like this idea, and it really came from some of the narratives that we read from the community about kind of the love of the garden and kind of the vibrancy of the neighborhood, about trying to pull some of that inspiration from the garden. So maybe it's flower theme or plant theme or something like that, that brings that vibrancy and that tie to kind of the legacy of the garden that used to be here and is now still integral part of the park and the neighborhood on the north side. Plenty of shade around the edges. There's various scale of shade from 16 by 16 canopies to 20 by 20, allowing for that picnic activity to happen where you'd be able to come out, have a birthday party here and kind of lay out space. So we call it kind of breathable space behind the main kind of walkway. That just allows for more flexibility because it really was, again, through that outreach, determined that this is really a family-friendly kind of multi-use facility. So we wanted to continue to make sure that there were opportunities for those types of activities to happen. And then finally, there is also the water slide. And what was really nice is when that maintenance building shifted, it opened up this opportunity to scoot the water slide over to the corner, which really becomes this fun little icon on the corner of 19th and Roosevelt, where it's this visual draw in. So when you come into the neighborhood, this will kind of punctuate the corner of the aquatics facility and in a way kind of become a beacon or an icon that welcomes you in when you come into the neighborhood. So here's a view across the lap lanes. We're counting 5 lap lanes right now with some kind of general pool area and then floating up to a beach entry to allow for various classes, fitness classes, as well as, like I said, club and practice kind of lap swimming. And again, another view across to the water slide. An example of the products that we're currently looking at. One interesting thing with the water slide, it actually doesn't output into the pool. It's an on deck. So you actually slide and then through the water system, it actually recirculates back up. And then you're able to kind of exit on the deck and then walk around. And then just some examples of some of the products that we're looking at for those vertical features that can bring some of the vibrancy and fun of the garden into the pool area. Some of the shade structures that we're looking at in terms of creating those little spaces for picnicking and then the umbrellas for shading the lounges, but opportunity to bring in color. And we're working with the city on kind of that color palette. And, if you have any thoughts on color palette, that would be good too, as we make those decisions. And with that, I'm going to pause for a moment and go back up to the plan and apologize for the fast-paced scrolling. But often when there's questions, it's easiest to just use this as a reference point. But I'll pause now for some Q&A if anyone has any specific questions on the advancement of the design in terms of the site. And then after a little bit of question and answer, we'll get into the renderings and plans for the community center. And feel free to type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and Shauna can call on you.
And depending on what kind of device you're on, your raise hand may be under reactions, or it could be under more, the 3 little dots.
Oh, one thing to note while questions are being typed, if they are, we talked a lot, we talked about parking a bit through that conceptual design and master plan phase, understanding that we'd need to increase the amount of parking within the park just to support some of the new amenities. There has been a balance that has been found in terms of the softness of that parking, so it just doesn't feel like additional asphalt. And we're working with the city of Tempe right now to use alternative pavement methods, stabilized crushed gravel, those types of things, permeable pavers within basically all the tan areas that you see here. One, it's a cooler pavement, and 2, just the permeability is nice. And 3, there's a softness that's that helps the feeling of being a park and not a parking lot. So that's just a kind of a side note. So if you're wondering why some of the parking is colored brown, that is why.
All right, you ready for a question?
Sure.
All right, so Jordan, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hey,
Okay,
Jordan.
awesome. So you mentioned that there was an intentional reduction of privacy surrounding the pool area facing out to the street. I was wondering if you could re-elaborate on the benefit of that and tell me if you've evaluated any of the risks associated with kind of having that like more open design within like a pool area.
Yeah. So and so there will still be a perimeter fence around, and there'll still be landscape screening. But the intent of the auxiliary building to move from a vertical kind of wall along Roosevelt to something that's tucked more into the park was to allow for easier visibility into the pool, so if it's being activated, if it's being used. From a patrolling standpoint, being able to patrol and see if after pool hours anybody is within the facility. It's really kind of that standpoint, as well as just being more of a welcoming visual into the park, as opposed to kind of a wall of building along Roosevelt. So those things kind of all added up into the reasoning of kind of switching that.
Thank you.
But yeah, not only the pool, being able to the swap on the auxiliary building, also from a patrolling standpoint and visibility standpoint, allows really where the blue car is from a patrolling standpoint, kind of to see through and into the center of the park, which is extremely helpful.
Larry, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, overall, it looks really great. I like the idea of making the community garden more in a central place near everything. I also like the idea of relocating the restrooms. My question is about the layout of the pool. I'm just looking at your new renderings versus the original renderings we had, and it just looks like that the area, the western side of the pool, where you're having the canopies and green space that opens up to the rest of the park. When I look at the original renderings, it just looks like there's more canopies, more green space, and also more trees just outside of the fence. And the new renderings, it seems like there's less of that, less canopies, less green space. And also for the community center or recreation center just north of the pool, it appears in the previous renderings that there was like an overhang or like structure that sort of served as a shade or like covered patio, so to speak. And it doesn't look like that's in the new rendering. So I just wanted clarification. I think it would be nice to have some sort of covered patio area, some sort of overhang in that section, as it looked like it previously was in the old renderings. Thank you.
Good comments, Larry. So on the overhang portion of it, I think part of that is just how this is rendered. There is a consistent kind of 8-foot overhang with various pockets that overhang deeper. And we'll get into that momentarily to create kind of outdoor sitting spaces underneath this. So right now, this is rendered as a big gray kind of rectangle, but really the building footprint underneath that is much smaller. So there is space both on the north side and on the south side that is shaded underneath that canopy. Instead of a trellis, it just became a kind of full expanse of roof. So that's that portion of it. The second comment that you made, yes, the pool area kind of to the west did contract a little bit. And most of that was budget driven in terms of making sure that we right size the pool. So so obviously the project can be on budget. We still have 6 kind of full shade structures along with patio umbrellas. Part of it is kind of a visual where the whole entire pool shifted west because the auxiliary building moved to the south. So that's part of the change, but you did notice that there was some reduction in the deck size. The pool area itself maintained relatively the same.
Thank you.
Looks like Jordan and Larry still have their hands up. I don't know, Jordan, did you have another question?
I do, sorry. My question is, I was wondering, well, first of all, I'm loving the playground. It looks really well informed and actually really interesting compared to most of the playgrounds that I've seen before. I was actually wondering, and this might come into play more in the community center, if you could elaborate on any specific like amenities and provision that you've designed for teenagers and adolescents. And then to follow that up, were the decisions going into like those amenity choices informed by gender disaggregated data?
The decisions in terms of the program stem from the early plan outreach, where we had kind of, went out and asked the community, what types of activities would you like to see in the park? What's currently not being served? What do you enjoy in the park, et cetera? And that really dictated what remained, what was working well, and then what we needed to add. And a big portion of that was obviously the relocation of the playground, making it feel more safe. And then the age range of the playground being from 2 to 5 and then 5 to 12. In terms of the kind of items designed for teens, obviously ball fields there, the basketball court remains, the volleyball court remains. Those tend to be items that are available for teens, as well as, garden use as well. And then the community center, which we'll get into more materially, is designed to be extremely flexible with kind of scalable multi-purpose rooms that will allow for a variety of different programs and uses. Part of the questions, part of the questionnaire that will be available online with this presentation is about kind of refining use as we go too. So with the community center, with the areas outside of the community center that are really designed as outdoor plazas, it's a bit open-ended. It kind of asks, these are the spaces that are getting created. How do you imagine using them? And the input that we get from that will help us determine how we detail them, how we provide storage solutions, from an exterior space, if we provide any other kind of elements around the building. So I think that still has, I still think there's that question in there if there's, how will it be used and is there anything else that we need to pay attention to? But as the kind of foundation for your question, much of the program that was developed and the decisions that have been made have been kind of a long process that started last 2 Octobers ago, October of 2020, through initial public outreach and kind of understanding what the community needs were.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
No problem. I was going to try to get to, apologize just for Larry. It's a little hard to see in that one too. So yeah, it's a little hard to see in that one just because of the shadow line. I think we're in January, so it's coming under. But if you can see, that building does kind of have an overhang that comes in along the side. And then you'd have penetrations in the building that get to the restrooms and various other kind of functions on the pool side of the building. All right. So if that's, I think that's a good pause point for the site, and we can always come back as you have other questions or comments. But now I'd like to turn it over to Diane Jacobs from Holly Street, architect extraordinary and community enthusiast. How's that for an intro? To talk about the development of the recreation center and pool house, how it has become one facility, how it also houses the park restrooms. So it really becomes this kind of community hub in the center of the park. And we can also talk a little bit about that maintenance yard and shop too. So with that, Diane, go for it.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Jacobs. I'm one of the architects at Holly Street Studio, who's worked on this project along with my colleagues, Sergio Carrasco, who's on the line, and also Haley Allen. As Brandon mentioned, this little building, which is not so little anymore, it's about 7,000 square feet. And then another I'm not sure, like couple thousand square feet for the maintenance building, is in the center of the park. In some ways, it's sort of surgically placed exactly where it could fit between the pool and the basketball court, the volleyball court, the baseball zone, and parking. And we were able to get all the requested amenities in this space and then some, and try to create a very open and flexible floor plan so that as time passes, many different things could happen within this one specific building. One of the questions I think that Larry asked and was correctly answered by Brandon was about shade. And you'll see as we get into the other renderings that shade is really the story of this building. What we've tried to do is create spaces within, but every space has a generous overhang associated with it so that not only the inside of the building provides a respite, but the edges of the building do so as well. The approach to the recreation center is going to be more formally and typically from the east side. You can see number 1 and number 2 are designating where you would come in from the street to go to the rec center. And number 2, you could come in, check in at a window and go straight into the pool. The idea here is that you have staff directly accessible to the main entry points with full visibility through the building, both to the north and to the south. And the most important thing about the approach and the way this building is sited in terms of the bigger picture is that it's meant to have visibility through the building, both on the long axis and on the short axis, so that as much as possible, staff and those responsible for younger folks visiting the facility have an opportunity to care for them, keep their eye on them, and make sure that everybody is safe and happy. So moving closer in onto the building, I know that Brandon, you zoomed in here. What's inside is divided into a series of kind of zones or particular uses, and you could see it sort of color coded. The yellow on the north side of the plan are multi-purpose rooms. Each of these rooms are meant to be flexible, day-lit, open spaces for a variety of activities, both active and more passive in terms of recreation. The facility, these spaces, along with the rest of the facility, is fully accessible and then some. We've made sure to include open spaces, wide corridors, push button openings to all the different areas, and complete visibility again for wayfinding. Each of the spaces has its own sort of storage kiosk that has running water and cabinets for any kind of food service or art projects or other things that you might want to do in these spaces. You can see that we have kind of a small, medium, and large, or we'll say large, larger, and extra large spaces. Those individual rooms, if you can point to that, Brandon, the space on the right side is about 800 square feet. Now the square footage is a moving target as we develop these plans, but that space is kind of almost like a large multi-purpose room that you would find in a recreation center. And then if you go over to the left, the center space is a medium size, oops, right there. And then 2 slightly smaller spaces, still pretty wide open for various activities. They are divided so that when one room has an activity, the other room, unless someone's really shouting, won't be able to hear what's going on. And they also have direct access to the north, which gives you access to outdoor recreation. You can look at the community garden, and you're right there on the east meadow when you come out of each of those spaces. So going south, I'm not going in numerical order, but you can see that we have a staff zone. The west side, where the number 5 is the guard room, and the east side, so the west side is aquatic staff, which also includes a private office. And then on the east side of that, you can see we have a lobby space, a check-in space, and offices for staff, again, with the intent of full visibility, both inside the rec center and outside to the pool zone. The restroom area is what would normally be considered a pool house for an aquatics facility, but because it's integrated in the rec center, it's sort of part of that as well. We have two different sides for the staff to be able to designate age groups from one side to the next, or however they might need to divide up the spaces or potentially close one half. They're designed to be unisex. The shower stalls, if you could point to those, Brandon, and the water closet, the toilet stalls are all closed off, little partitioned kind of rooms, if you will. So the whole entire facility can be gender neutral as you find different ways to use it as different people come in and require levels of privacy, levels of accessibility, and the need to stay close together if you're using this facility as a family. You can see that there's some locker spaces in there as well. One of the things that we were able to do was take the park restroom program and add that to this building. It helped with budgeting, it helped with securing infrastructure and utilities to this space, and made a connection to the larger building, which also includes staff, but is open directly to the park to the west, so that when you use the baseball field and the rest of the building is not in operation, you have these restroom facilities available to you. In addition to that, we're able to include a mechanical space, all the machinery that runs the building, a storage space. There is an adaptive recreation program that's very active that will be part of this facility. And this is a place for all of the belongings and the equipment that they use to be housed and accessible from the outside. And then we have pool storage and of course the janitor space. The only space we didn't really cover is where there's electrical and IT, and those are kind of back of house things. And we have generous storage so that just below that, so that when the multi-purpose rooms do not require furniture and they need to be for fitness or other things, you can have a place to safely stow the furniture and then easily pull it back out. So that is what happens inside the facility. If you can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the design. Now, it's important, we talk about this all the time in our studio, to recognize that although this looks photorealistic, it's really just a rendering. It has all kinds of indications of materials which we are still investigating. And that's why we're showing this to everyone today, not just materials, but the flow of the space and accessibility and other things are still being developed. So that's important that you know that, so that we can take your input. The design was inspired by a walk through your community at Clark Park. It was important that we pick up on the generous shade structures that you see in those mid-century homes, this sense of transition from the outside to the inside, and this slightly compressed scale for a feeling of warmth, invitation, welcome, and strong wayfinding. We wanted to scale this building for engagement, for a sense of comfort, but also a sense of openness, and like I said, invitation and accessibility. Many of the surfaces that you'll see on this building are going to be discussed with Rebecca Rothman and the City of Tempe Public Arts community, and we're going to look for inventive ways to integrate art into the facility so that it really becomes a unique destination and very much a part of your neighborhood. So we can go to the next one. This is the beginning of our strategy for the lobby area. You'll come in more or less on the west side of this image. And the idea is that staff will have kind of a set area, but maybe kind of an open invitation for folks to come and engage with staff. There's offices to the right side, and you could see full visibility through to the pool zone and to the neighborhood onto the street. We wanted to pick up, like I said, on the lines and the design vocabulary of the neighborhood in the mid-century kind of architectural language, but give it a contemporary sort of twist and make sure that it's an interpretation, but it's still very much a building of its time. We are also going to be designing this building with the guidelines from the International Green Construction Code. So it will be carefully considered with everything from the mechanical system efficiency to using responsible products to how we can minimize the load by good construction. Go to the next one. So you can see, Larry, how the previous rendering that you were referring to had a building and then sort of additive overhang canopies. And what we decided to do with our partners at Hayden Building Company was to create, to work with them to find ways to simplify the structure, but also to create an integral overhang that's part of the roof rather than an additive element that requires another level of maintenance or another level of attachment to the building. And so this floating roof behaves more, we hope, like a park pavilion rather than an enclosed building with additive, with additive shade. You can also see on the right side, oh, go back one, that the idea is that those multi-purpose rooms, while they're enclosed and we can have window coverings, are meant to be still connected to the park. This area here looks very blank. We'll be working with our partners at Dig Studio, and we are envisioning this to be heavily shaded by trees. So we're not just doing architectural shade, but the best shade of all, which is landscape shade, will begin to get populated here on the north side. One thing we know from doing community centers is that pickup and drop off is really important. And so we're trying to create an area here that if someone needed to wait, whether they were coming to pick up or they're waiting to be picked up, that there was a safe and comfortable place for them to be. Okay, next one. This shows the west side, the public restroom building, which is meant to be kind of this bookend with landscape shade near it. And you could see that the westernmost multi-purpose room has a very deep overhang, just like at the opening. And what we anticipate is being able to open up those doors and activities to spill out. So we have a very tight budget in terms of square footage and construction cost on this building, but we always try very hard to kind of exploit that with our beautiful Arizona weather and see if we can't double the useful kind of footprint of this building by providing shade and the opportunity for spaces to open up and engage with the outside. And a glimpse on the inside. The idea here is that the scale on the outside and the scale on the inside are compatible. We'll work to provide as much daylighting as possible, minimizing the energy load on the building. You can see over to the left side where built-in components will be part of the amenities there. So various groups can use those services depending on what kinds of activities they're going to use. And again, clear visibility and accessibility to the park itself. This shows from the East Meadow what it might look like looking towards the building. And again, I'm so excited to be working with Rebecca and the arts community to help shape what these available planes of masonry and building and even planters and paving might receive by way of art inspiration and participation in the design of this building. The building does have a pitched roof. It has like a hip style roof, which is something that's prevalent in the neighborhood, but it's meant to be very long and sort of shallow with an emphasis on that plane that gives us that much needed and beloved shade, depending on what time of day you're standing on what part of the building. Also integrated with nature so that you have a sense of connection to the outdoors while you're inside and vice versa. We deliberately kept that meadow pretty open there. There's so much in this park with volleyball and basketball and baseball and the garden and the dog park. We wanted to make sure that there was just a big open field. And as we joke with Vince, a place to play football on Thanksgiving morning. So that was very important to keep. So I think this pretty much covers the sort of concept of the building. As I mentioned before, we are not hermetically sealed when it comes to our drawings. We are open to ideas and suggestions. Pretty much what we have worked hard to fit in here are program elements. So I don't think we'll be able to at this stage add square footage or add sort of additional amenities, but we welcome your feedback on everything else. So thank you for listening.
Perfect. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, and that kind of open-ended questioning is also part of that online survey in terms of how you'd imagine spaces, how you'd imagine using the outdoor spaces, how you feel about, you know, the scale and materiality of the building in terms of integrating into the neighborhood. So would love to hear the community's input on that. So, but right now, if there's any questions on what Diana has just presented, it looks like there's maybe one in the chat. Larry says the building looks great. I really like the mid-century style.
Glad to hear it. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I don't see any hands. Again, you're welcome to raise your hands or type in the chat.
Doesn't look like it. I think that might be it there.
Then for those that attended, I did put a direct link to the comment form in the chat. We'd appreciate any feedback.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you everybody for your time. Again, speaking for the team, we appreciate the opportunity to have dialogue again and receive feedback and look forward to, oh, I'm sorry. I have one more slide that we had not paused on. Apologize about that, Shauna. All right. Actually, before we get into the project schedule going forward, we did get another question in the chat, Diane, from Sean. Will there be programs for all ages of kids and adults?
So fortunately and unfortunately, I don't get to put on the programs, although that would be something I would love to do. But the spaces are designed to accept all kinds of programs for both. So that might be best answered by, I know Mercedes is on the line, or Sean Wagner, or Shauna. If one of you all have some input as to what the programs will be in the building, that would be great.
Thanks, Diane, and good evening, everyone. This is Sean Wagner. I work with the Parks and Recreation Division. And yes, we'll have multi-generational programming in the facility and throughout the park. So that will continue. We do envision using this as a center too for our adaptive recreation program. So we're really excited about that opportunity as well. And obviously hosting community events and meetings, neighborhood meetings, you know, that type of thing. This facility will be available for that as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. And then Frank asked on Saturday, so and Sean, I just saw that you replied, but yes, there'll be an in-person, we'll have boards up underneath the Ramadas at the park this Saturday from 10 to 11. So if you know anybody that was not able to attend tonight, that would like to know more about the improvements that are going to happen, yeah, please have them come out to the park Saturday morning. It should be a beautiful day. We'll set up there and be able to discuss kind of casually the improvements that will be taking place.
And Brandon, I'd just also like to mention that if somebody wasn't able to make it this evening or anything like that, please let them know they can get it. They can view the video online, and the survey is actually going to be open until February 17th. So we would love feedback. Again, we get it that not everybody can make it during the dates and times for the live presentation, but it will be available, and we appreciate all the feedback we can get.
Yep. Yeah, agree.
And if you want to, yeah, take a closer look at the pictures, the presentation is a PDF on the website as well.
Perfect. So yeah, last slide. I apologize. I after the Q&A. I forgot about that. Project schedule. So that's probably a big question from the group is when is everything going to start and when is it going to be complete? The schedule that we're looking at right now is beginning early summer 2022 would be beginning construction. And this is kind of set up construction wise in phases where we would start with the demolition work of the existing facilities, the existing recreation center, and really focus on the relocation of the community garden. We can't build a pool until the community garden is set, and the timing works out just perfectly where we can do a lot of the relocation of the community garden during their off season, which is over the middle of summer, and with the target of having that complete by fall 2022 and have that amenity open at that time. Part of the early work as well would be to construct some walkways and construct a portion of the parking along Roosevelt. The intent is, since this is a park, like Sean had mentioned, with a lot of various amenities, including the baseball field, the dog park, and others, if we can open some of it early in fall, while the major construction is going on, that's just a benefit to the community. So that is the goal right now, is to begin construction in summer 2022. And then by fall of 2022, have a portion of those new circulation improvements, so the sidewalks, and then that community garden up and functioning, well, then essentially the lower south east corner of the park where the current community garden is, that would be the area that would be closed down for major construction of the community center that you just saw presented and the pool facility, as well as that would be the time when the existing restroom over in the northwest corner of the park would be demolished and a new smaller parking area would be built there, along with a walkway that would connect into the dog park. The schedule right now is summer of 2023 for all of the amenities that you saw today being constructed and completed. So that would be, garden, playground, pool, rec center, all complete. The intent, working with Hayden, is that the baseball field and the dog park, are very important and popular amenities. Those would remain open throughout the course of construction. So you may see some, fence shifts, you may see some things kind of move around during construction, but the intent is to maintain access and usability as much as possible to the existing amenities that are out on site. Any other questions on project schedule from the group? Does not look like it. So with that, thank you again for your time. And like Sean said, we appreciate all and every comment. It does help the design process and helps make a better project for you all. So thank you very much.